Hi everyone, I'm going to be doing a project where I'm going to try and achieve a lot of texture in the surface, and first of all I'm going to be using some cotton gauze as my carrier fabric. I'll be using Superfine Merino, my most loved material, and to achieve the texture I'm going to be embellishing using a variety of fabrics, including some viscose silk velvets. This is some polyester. I made a dress out of them. There's some pieces left over. Got some silk hankies, various bits and pieces. So this is how I sometimes start off. Lots of little bits and pieces, and as I go along I'll see how I'll use them or not use them. I'll be making a t-shirt type top using my carrier fabric, my merino, and the embellishing fabrics. So I'll catch up with you once I've laid out and have a bit of a chat then.
I started to lay out my materials. I'm a colourist, so I work with fields of colour. But with this project, I also had to bracket in texture as part of the playing with fibres and fabrics. I laid one layer of superfine merino wool, thinking less wool, more fabric would produce more interesting ruching. I would usually lay 2 layers of merino wool when doing Nuno with lots of fabric embellishment. I used a lot more of the polyester material than I had first anticipated. It's pretty, floral, and reminds me of Monet's garden, or a cottage garden motif, as well as containing a crinkled surface. I thought it also married with a brown sari silk with embroidery. Both are extremely hard to felt, being water resistant and tightly woven. Not to mention the viscose silk velvets, which I really love to work into my Nuno felt, but find these can also be problematic.
Welcome back. I've got all my pieces laid out, front, a back, and 2 short sleeves, and I've done a bit of gathering with some of the fabrics just to create a variation in the thickness to see how the wool takes that up. And I've also got some polyesters which don't tend to felt very easily, so we'll see how we go with the roller, handling all these variations in fabric thicknesses, and some fabrics being thicker, thinner, or more slippery than others. So it'll be a bit of a challenge, I think. May not look the best, but in any case it'll be interesting.
Here is an example of my hand ruched or gathered bits of silk sari fabric, which I created to add extra bulk and texture, and which I have used in several places. This rust dyed China silk has also proven problematic when I've used it in the past. On the right of the screen you can see some hand gathered sari silk fabric, as well as the brown embroidered sari silk fabric. I wetted down all pieces with felting solution, 4 generous squirts of shampoo in half a bucket of cold water. Placed them between 2 drop sheets, then Philip helped me to fold the piece in half, one half directly onto the other half, so it could fit onto the drive roller. I was using the 1100mm gentle roller. The rolling was taken up from all sides. We opened the bundle up and folded it in the opposite direction, so it was back to back again, and taken up on the drive roller from all 4 sides again. It was a large bundle with lots of very tricky pieces of fabrics. The bundle was rolled about 10 to 12,000 revolutions, which is equivalent to about 2 hours of rolling on the gentle roller, without counting the inspection times. After rolling was completed, all pieces were line dried before I started to embellish with hand embroidery, using different coloured and thicknesses of threads in both cotton and silk to marry the disparate fabrics into a whole. The polyester floral panels were being difficult, and so I used a running stitch in very fine silk thread around the edges of these pieces to ensure that they did not peel up. Then I trimmed the edges and sewed the pieces together using my sewing machine. Seeing the pre-felt, my mother, who had been watching me work, didn't believe it would ever shrink to a wearable size. Here I am finishing the seams. The seams are sewn wrong sides together. That is with the wool side out, and I'll lay superfine merino over the seams, matching the colour. Wet it. Give it a few rubs with the hand roller until it starts to bind with the rest of the surface fibres. Your gentle roller will arrive with a complementary hand rolling tool. This will also come in handy to work tricky stubborn areas if you don't want to work the whole area of an item. Once the seams were covered, I laid out the whole garment with a thin plastic resist inside, wet both sides down and sandwiched the pre-felt in between drop sheets on either side ready to roll a little longer to enable the seams to settle and blend into the rest of the garment. Thus the whole piece was rolled another 4,000 times to really bed in the seams, 1,000 rolls from each side.
I had felted over the seams and I put it back on the roller and with a plastic resist inside so that the two sides wouldn't stick together, and I gave the whole piece several thousand rolls, and I've just taken it off the roller and I've just worked the seams a little bit by hand there was just a bit of a pleat forming from the fold and the resist. So I've just rubbed those out, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to chuck it in the rumbler and see how it falls. I've got a whole lot of fabric in it, and it'll be interesting to see actually how it does roush. I've got a bad feeling that some bits aren't going to roush at all because I've used a lot of this polyester fabric, and although the fibres have come through, it's just not getting very crinkled. You can see some other bits are very dimpled and marbled, whereas this fabric is still quite flat.
Here is the panel of polyester that I was concerned about. You can see the wool fibres in burgundy pushing through the fabric, but it is not beginning to roush as well as some other parts. You can see on the right of the screen a running stitch I did to pick out a flower motif on the fabric. At the bottom of your screen you will notice the detail of the hand roushed silk fabric placed to highlight the edge of the neckline. By comparison, this piece of embroidered sari silk placed down the bottom of the tunic front is beginning to dimple rather well and was more than ready to being fooled. If only the rest of the garment looked as good and ready.
Anyway, into the rubbler is going to go.
The garment needed to shrink a great deal. In effect, I was trying to gather a lot of fabric with a minimum amount of wool. I had used around 110 grams of superfine merino for the whole garment. All up, it took about 2,000 rumbles, with some hand scrunching in areas where I wanted shaping. For instance, around the bust and armhole areas, as my pieces tend to be rather squarish to start with. So the garment experienced around 20 minutes in the rumbler, using only cold water to enable the shrinking to a stage where I was happy to say it was done. I could have folded it more quickly using warm to hot water, but I don't like to shock my fibres. Also, working with cold water allows me greater control to manipulate the shape and size of the garment. Here I am modelling the finished top. It's turned out much better than my expectations, and I'm extremely happy with the finish. The polyester that I was worried about roushed in some interesting variations. For example, here's the big panel of the fabric to the right of the screen, with the viscose velvet in the centre, and in between a little hand embroidery with various other sari silk bits. All the fabrics came together beautifully. The different textures are wonderful, and the colours, albeit I'm not a brown fan, are rather fantastic in combination. Using the polyester fabric was a beautiful way to upcycle a dress whose fabric I liked, but whose style was rather old-fashioned. Wearing the fabric in the tunic will definitely be more me. Voila, my textured cottage garden tunic top.